Hey guys, it's Alex here with GameWatcher. I've just seen a pretty badass demo of Total War Warhammer. Why not Total Warhammer? I'm curious, but I'll ask that in a second. And I'm now here with a couple of the guys who are working on the game. So, do you want to introduce yourself to everybody?
Yeah, sure. I'm James Winston. I'm a campaign designer.
My name's Andy Hall. I'm the lead writer.
Excellent. So yeah, first question: why not Total Warhammer?
Well, it's kind of the marriage of two amazing game systems. So at its core, it's a Total War game. So obviously the Total War element, and we are incorporating the huge game that is Warhammer, the tabletop game. We're incorporating that into our game. So hence the name.
If you guys want to call it Total Warhammer, the Chaos Gods aren't going to strike you down until you're into Chaos Spawn.
So I've got to say, it's pretty awesome for you guys to see you guys unleashed. History's pretty cool and everything, but seeing the crazy stuff you have there, the magic, all that sort of stuff, is this something you've wanted to do for a long time? Before you were going to do this, was there temptation within the studio to say, well, screw it, we don't have a license, but maybe we'll do something with Norse mythology or something like that?
Yeah, we've wanted to do a fantasy game for quite a while now, and obviously we've got 15 years experience of doing these broad scope games that really evoke a period of history, and it just seemed that the stars moved into line, that Warhammer became available, they were interested, we were interested, and here we are.
I was actually at I worked at Games Workshop for 16 years before I joined the guys here, so I was on the other side of the fence, and it was just as Games Workshop wanted a Total War version of Warhammer just as much as these guys wanted Warhammer as part of Total War. So it's a match made in heaven, and the stars finally aligned basically, and so here we are.
So it's obviously very different development-wise as far as factions and stuff go. Like, if you're looking at Rome, there's obviously differences between Rome itself and the Germanic empires or the Celtic empires, but there's a core similarity where you can reuse work. That isn't the case so much here. So how have you coped with that additional workload, other than obviously slimming back a bit to a few less factions?
Well, on the battle side, obviously, we've still got swordsmen and bowmen, and we've got a long history of kind of doing epic scale battles featuring those sorts of units. But now we've got flying creatures, magic, giant creatures going on. So it's just about kind of creating new mechanics to incorporate those within the system we've already got, and that's the kind of the exciting challenge we've got in front of us. And
Well, I don't quite agree with you when you say a few less factions, because what we have is actually races. So each race is probably the equivalent of a whole previous game's worth of factions. You've got the humans, or the Empire, and it's not, you're not playing as just one unified empire. In the game, Karl Franz has just become the Emperor. You've got to unify all these different provinces, as well as batting off the orcs and troublesome dwarves and vampires, and also there's a threat from the north. You could probably guess what that's going to be. The orcs as well, they play totally different. They're brutal on the battlefield. They're brutal, and they come with big creatures and flying creatures, and also goblins. So even within the orcs and goblins race, there are two sub-races there. And also they play totally different in the campaign, don't they, Jim?
yeah, that's something we're really going for, is each of the 4 races we're going for in the initial release will play different on the campaign side. We'll kind of give them a different blend of features so that each race you play feels totally different from another one. So, for example, for experienced Total War players, maybe the Empire might be closer to what they've experienced previously in a Total War, so tech trees, building up your cities, politics, budgeting, that kind of thing. But Greenskins, as Andy mentioned, they're not really about that kind of thing. They're not worrying about balancing the bank balance.
So that we tax people, are they?
Yeah, exactly. So we kind of pare back on certain features with them and add new features that kind of evoke something from the Warhammer world. So in the Warhammer world, the Greenskins have this concept of the War, where a very successful leader will naturally gather greenskins to him, and then when there's enough of them, they'll just go off on the rampage, and that's what we've got kind of in our campaign to make them feel different. And on the other end of the scale, if they just sit around not fighting, greenskins will fight themselves. So you get this kind of animosity thing going on where their armies start beating each other up. So
you're your strategy there is to keep the orcs and goblins fighting. And again, with the dwarfs and the vampires, they will each have their own individual playstyle. So, in effect, if it's going to take you 200 hours to play the Empire alone, that's the number I'm just plucking off the top of my head, to unify them, and you can imagine, then you've got the same kind of play time in the orcs and the dwarfs and the vampires alone. So it's going to keep you busy.
And I find that fascinating, especially, in light of the fact that you guys ultimately decided, wow, there is so much content here, we're not going to do one game, we're going to do 3. So, I mean, how did that decision come about? Was that just because of the number of races and you realised that this was just not going to be...
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as we've already mentioned, Warhammer is a huge game. Every race is it's got a full history behind it, a huge range of units, unique magical laws, magic items, and really to do justice to that, we kind of need that broad scope of the trilogy of games we're going to be releasing. There's going to be DLC, free LC in between that as well, and that just gives us that sort of bandwidth to really focus down on each race and really nail the actual implementation of them.
I think to be fair to the IP, to be fair to Total War and Warhammer fans and new fans alike, we didn't want to go wide and shallow, we wanted to go deep. So make sure that the 4 races we have chosen are fully represented, that you have a full gamut of, as Jim said, magic items and troop types, to make sure that your race, your favourite race, is represented properly for you.
The Warhammer IP is obviously a bit more inspired by the likes of D&D, a bit more RPG-ish, and in there was talk of character progression for the hero characters, quest lists, all that sort of stuff. So can you talk a bit about the quest battles and about character progression and how you're integrating that stuff into the traditional Total War experience, which is usually a bit devoid of that stuff, really?
Yeah. Well, there's named characters within the Warhammer game, so Karl Franz is an example, and they kind of have unique magic items, and in order to unlock those you can undertake a quest chain, and each of those stages as you undertake that quest chain is an opportunity for us to do some storytelling and bring the kind of lore into the focus for the players, and it culminates in one of these quest battles, which is a bit of a sculptured battle experience. We can do things with the battle map, kind of the way the AI is behaving and so on, and if you can work out a way to defeat this battle, you're going to get that unique kind of epic magic item. So yeah, it's a real good opportunity to get that storytelling element into the game.
It allows us to drip feed in the fiction, so if you've never played Warhammer or never heard of it before, you're going to kind of get that flavour without you're not going to need an entrance exam to play Warhammer, just as you didn't need to be a Roman historian to play Rome 2. So again, it's not trying to intimidate the player by all this rich lore, that you can come as a fanboy like myself, and hopefully we can seed in a lot of cool Easter eggs from the Black Library novels, from the army books of yore. But if you don't know anything about Warhammer, you're as welcome to come and play it and learn as you go along.
But at its core, it is a Total War game. It's sandbox gameplay as well. So this is kind of additional content on top of what we always do. You can engage with it if you want to, you can ignore it if you want to. It's going to be great if you do engage with it, but ultimately it's a sandbox game. You can take the race you're playing in whatever direction you want to take them, really.
And that brings me to, an important point, which is, of course, that you guys have a very dedicated, and I'm sure very vocal, fan base of people who have come in through being history buffs and enjoying that side of things. So 2 questions, really. Part 1 is, what are you doing in this game to ensure that, in terms of balance and the way the game handles, that can still satisfy those people? And second, obviously, are you guys still dedicated to continuing down that path at the same time as doing Warhammer, which you've already committed to doing 3 games of?
Well, I'll take part 2 first. This is a dedicated team that's working on Total War Warhammer. We still have another team that's working on the historical games, so nice. No problems there. Well,
part 1, I suppose, is for experienced Total War players. We're bringing in, as we mentioned earlier, all these different facets. It's going to be the first time you have air-to-air combat or air-to-ground combat in Total War. So even if you're not, into the lore or even into fantasy games, there's some cool strategy elements there. How do big creatures work? How does magic work? I mean, again, we're trying to make sure the magic using kind of the winds of magic, which Warhammer players will be familiar with. So you can't just come on and go big spell after big spell, but the correct spell used at the correct time will probably win you the battle. And so there's a lot of tactics there, knowing when to do that, as well as using, you know, the big monsters. You know, if you leave them to themselves, they're probably going to get overrun.
Yeah.
But if you use them as part of a flank attack when the balls come in, you know, there's a lot of strategy to be had.
Awesome. So, is there anything in particular you want fans to look out for? Anything that is, you know, anything you want to tease that's unannounced to kind of cap it off, that you want to say, oh, look out for this in the future?
My personal favourite is the Doom Diver, which is a goblin unit. It's an absolutely crazy unit where a goblin climbs onto a catapult, his mates fire him off into the air, and he's on a hang glider and has to guide himself to the target and hit them with his pointy hat. So absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and you as the player, if you want, again, it's about that macro and micro level. So you can take a grand strategy blue, or if you want, you can actually guide that goblin into a unit, or miss him, or do air-to-air somersaults. Of course, while you're doing that, the rest of the battle is continuing on with it. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So thank you so much for your time, guys. I mean, when are you looking to be out?
Well, we're going to make a precise announcement later this year, but we're looking around 2016.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Welcome.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. The demo was awesome, so
Cheers.
thank you so much.
Blood for the blood god.
See you next time, guys.